Good evening, everyone. Oh, responsive crowd tonight. How are you doing? Good, because I am overjoyed to be celebrating the launch of engagement economics with so many friends, coworkers, peers, professors, and even some new faces in the audience. So for those of you who don't know who I am, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Diondra Filicetti, and I am the author of Engagement Economics. I'm also a 2-time TEDx speaker and a learning and development professional. And tonight we're celebrating here an idea for a reason. IDEA has been an integral part of my journey and of my growth, and also the growth of my company, Driven by Co. And so through Driven by, I do keynotes, workshops, training, consulting, and in that work, I've learned a lot about common themes for high-performing teams, and also what disengaged teams are missing. So although it may seem like this book came out of nowhere, it's actually been 4 years in the making. I just didn't tell you. It all started in 2021 when I had the thought of actually pulling all of this information together and writing it down into a book. But as a matter of fact, engagement economics was in the works much before that. And it all began on a Wednesday afternoon. I was sitting in a boardroom with my team and we were discussing a business problem. We had really high processing times compared to our competitors. And so I had sat in that boardroom many times before, but this time I truly paid attention. I looked around and the faces were faces of irritation, dejection, disinterest. We were all disengaged. Yet I was in a room filled with people who had specialized knowledge and a wealth of experience, but we couldn't solve the problem. For every idea that was raised, a problem was presented. And when it came time to assigning responsibility, it was fingers pointing instead of hands raising. It was very clear that we all didn't want to be there, including me. But the thing is, at this company, it wasn't always this way. In fact, when people first started at the company, they were excited and overjoyed to contribute and be part of a team. But then time and time again, I would watch that engagement fade away. And see, the thing is, in these boardrooms, we're often talking about economic problems like profit, revenue, expenses, processing times. But yet, engagement is never the topic of discussion. But I think that would change if we knew the true costs of disengagement. Gallup, a multinational analytics company, estimates that disengagement costs the global economy $8.9 trillion every year. That's staggering. That's bad economics. In fact, that's bad engagement economics. But what is engagement? Do you remember your first job? Were you excited, looking forward to contributing to a team? That was engagement. You were willing to go above and beyond to work with your team, right? Now, I describe engagement through the discretionary effort model. And the discretionary effort model describes the difference between what we want to do and what we have to do. In other words, how much more above the bare minimum are we willing to do? The more engaged we are, the more that we're willing to do. Because we all know that when we're disengaged, we don't want to do much more than the bare minimum. Why? So what is engagement economics? Well, we understand the concept of economics, but engagement economics has to do with how is engagement impacting our economy when it comes to performance and profitability. So Gallup did a study in their State of the Global Workforce report, and they found that 77% of the global workforce is not engaged. Imagine the economic losses. And as a matter of fact, in studies, it shows that disengaged employees create dysfunctional work relationships, have lower productivity. There's an unwillingness to go above and beyond, higher turnover, more absences. Imagine the cost And so you wonder why more leaders don't treat engagement as a critical business strategy. I don't know about you, but I've had I meant to say managers who contribute to the disengagement problem. But there was also a study done where they compared the most engaged employees to the least engaged employees. And managers were responsible for a percentage of that difference. Now, what percent do you think that was? 100%. Any other guesses? 10, 20, 30, 35? Any other guesses?
70.
70? 80? 65? 56?
82.5.
82.5. Well, you were right. It was 70%. 70% of the difference between the most engaged employees and least engaged employees is attributed to the manager. So failing to develop our managers is a costly mistake. And my theory is maybe they're not bad, maybe they're just unprepared. So that's where engagement economics comes in. It helps our leaders answer the question, what does my team need in order to be engaged? And so in the book, I go through a hierarchy of team engagement needs, because we need to be in the right environment, we need to be inclined for the work, and we need to be activated. What does that all mean? Okay, let's start with environment. Did you know that between April to September 2021, 24 million people left their jobs? Then in 2022, 50.5 million people quit. And they called this the Great Resignation. But why? Why do you think they left? Was it A, pay compensation, B, workload and stress, or C, a toxic work culture? A, B, B and C.
Why not pretty?
If you said C, you'd be correct. The number one cited reason for quitting was a toxic work culture. Because our environment in our workplace has a profound effect on us. So I want to illustrate this through a story of a leader of a print and graphics company in Vaughan, Ontario. His name's Charlie. So before he got his start in leadership, he actually started his career at Coca-Cola. So in the interview with me, he talks about how on his first day, he wasn't sure what to expect. But he walked in there and he was hit immediately with positive work culture. People were excited, they worked together, they shared the brand values. And he thought, wow, these people are really excited about this soft drink. But that was the case at Coca-Cola. And it was a workplace that he had never, a workplace environment that he had never witnessed before, because most of us know that many workplaces, we show up, we do the job, and we go home. But the message at Coca-Cola was, you better drink the cola, get on board with the brand, or you're going to get left behind. And so Charlie did. But then he talks about how if that day he had walked into Coca-Cola and it was a toxic work environment, he probably would have just thought, well, I guess that's how things work around here. And he would have adjusted his behavior and productivity accordingly. That's the impact of our environment. So for an environment for engagement, we need to have a sense of control. We need to have the ability for expansion. We need positive work culture, and there needs to be trust. Next is inclination. And inclination has to do with alignment and fit. Do our skills align with the tasks we need to do? Do our interests align with the job? Do our values align with the company? Because think of a first date scenario. You're getting to know this person, but what are you really doing? You're looking for alignment. Do your interests and values align with this person? If they do, well, great, you're probably going on a second date, right? I hope so. But if they don't, if this person's interests don't align, if their values don't align, if they don't have the skills you're looking for, there's a chance you might be disengaged in that relationship. But the same goes for our work. To be engaged, our skills, interests, and values need to be aligned. We need to be inclined for the work and the role. And finally, activation. If you recall the space race of the 1950s and 60s, you'll remember that they set out to do the impossible, to land a man on the moon. But how do you engage people to rise to the challenge and do something that has never been done before? Well, you activate them.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
And they did it. They landed a man on the moon. And during times of much change and uncertainty, Apollo 11 activated people. There was a common opponent, a common purpose that connected everyone. And they had a strong belief that it was possible. Because where there's activation, there's a way. So if any of you find yourself in those Wednesday afternoon meetings, disengaged, disinterested, it might just be time to turn to engagement economics. Thank you so much.